Hello and welcome to Multifamily Elevated. My name's Suzanne Hopson, and I am super excited to talk to you about vision, people, and execution, and how you can utilize this information to elevate you and your team and your experience in multifamily. Brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network, giving you the latest and greatest news and content across our multifamily sector. So let's jump in. Enjoy this episode of Multifamily Elevated and enjoy the climb. Hello, everyone, and thank you again for joining us at Multifamily Elevated. My name is Suzanne Hopson. I'm your host today. Very excited about our next guest that we will be talking with. Why am I so excited? Well, because it's about budgets. Well, and so much more. There's more to it than just budgets, but it is budget season, and most of us are finishing up and putting the last touches to our business plans for next year. And there's always the chat about how to make our budgets more accurate and more of a tool that is used in our day-to-day. And so with this guest we have coming on, we're going to be diving into all of that and a lot more. So before any more time goes by, I want to go ahead and introduce our guest, Krista Wilson. Welcome so much. We're so happy to have you here today.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here with you. Very excited to talk about budgeting, of course, since that is what I do, what I have been doing for what feels like a long time, and I'll just say that it's been at least 20 years. I've spent about 25 years in the multifamily industry. My titles have changed here and there, but the common thread at the heart of it all is that I help people make sense of the budget process. I started working with the ops team, so I learned, operationally how everything works and how the budgets sort of play along with that. And I eventually grew into more of the FP&A role, which is more finance. And, it's important to have this kind of person who understands operations and understands finance. And we're the bridge. We're the bridge that takes both directions with the kind of processing that's necessary so that you get a good flow and you get the good amount of collaboration. Budgeting is it's not just dollar signs on a spreadsheet. It's very much more than that. You work with, and I have worked with all of the different groups, the complexity of the way all of the groups work together and the dynamic of that. You've got emotional impacts that come with budgeting. It's not anybody's day job. And, when you're a manager and you're dealing with fire, flood, and blood, you also have to get your budget done. So I've experienced firsthand, the late night conversations, the trembles and the voices, the kinds of human, factors that I think are involved with budgeting, which I think that's the part that makes it special. And multifamily,
Totally.
especially.
Yes. Yeah, especially in multifamily, right?
Yeah.
And you really do have an extensive span of experience in multifamily. Will you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now,
Yeah.
today, how that relates to our conversation?
Yeah, thank you. And what I'm doing now, I feel like it's like the circle back or the full circle or the poetic something. I can't think of the right thing to say because if you've spent 20 plus years working with the budget process in a less than ideal way, and I'm just going to say mostly with Excel based tools,
Mm-hmm.
um, you experience a lot of pain. And you witness other people experience a lot of pain. And so right now I have the absolute pleasure of working with REBA, Real Estate Business Analytics, which is a prop tech software, and I am the budget, the product manager for the budget application. Getting to sort of build this product from the ground up. I work closely, of course, with Donald Davidoff, who's the thought leader in the multifamily, um, space, and getting to really be thoughtful about what I would have wished I had all of those years that I did budgeting. at a pretty large scale, and what would have been a better way. So it's full circle, it's giving back, and getting to just sort of, it's quite a bit of a dream come true in a way, because
Oh, I
what a
love
better
that.
way, to get through the whole cycle and come back with like, here's the tool we wish we had had. So,
Totally. A lot of the times we're just suffering. We don't really get a chance to work on the solution. And so, yeah, that's exciting. And I actually had Don on the show, so I had a chance to
uh-huh,
talk with him, and so
yeah.
I've been really excited about our time together
Good.
because I've also experienced a lot of pain through that process in
Have
the
you?
30
Oh, wow.
years. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, 30
Yeah.
years in multifamily, in various roles too, with different seats in the budget process. And so I don't know that it ever was easy. So I can't wait. I can't wait to dive in. Just a few questions first, and we can start there. But why do you think that budgeting is such a pain point for multifamily today? Still.
Yes. Well, to the extent that a large number of large businesses are still using Excel for their budgeting, um, that is a pain point. We love Excel. Excel is powerful. It does amazing things, but it is not meant to be an enterprise solution, um, for especially a, mid to large size business. And you just run into a lot of trouble, right? You've got Excel files that could be corrupted or damaged or lost and put in the wrong place. You've got, trying to control the versions, right? If you need that central person or team to push out values to all of these separate um, Excel files, that's extremely burdensome. You run into human error, your ability to be nimble and quick, and to, like if somebody says, you know what, change this expense amount from this to this, so it could take, a long time. And the ability to roll everything up to the final answer, of course, is constrained by that kind of a workaround, a workflow is what I mean. Really, an enterprise-wide system like a cloud-based product where everything is, first of all, you're able to employ some really good functionality that has shortcuts that help the users to just, get in and get out. One of the biggest things I wanted to achieve with the product I work on is to get that operating team in and out of the budget process as quick as possible, because like I said, it's not their day job. They've got things to deal with. And if you can just shorten the amount of time that they're in there, and also, um, you know, make their part a little more concise. So I think, that's the biggest, I think, in addition, sorry, I want to point out one more big part of this is that it's called the key person risk. And that's what I was for a million years, and I did not get hit by a bus, thankfully. But, when you're in that role and you've got sometimes one person who understands everything about this whole budget process, that's not a great place to be, as a business, as an organization. So that key person risk, I think, is a big, um, and it ties that person up into a role that it's hard to get out of, and you would like your humans to be using their brains on, analytics and a more strategic approach to the numbers and the process, rather than pasting data from one thing to another thing, and just kind of manipulating all of this Excel. Am I allowed to say Excel hell?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. We're all familiar with the
Uh-huh.
roadblocks and the friction. And you're talking my language about how people work and really maximizing human potential. And when your tools get in the way of that, you can tell the impact that that has, not only on morale
Mhm.
and productivity, but ultimately on your end product. And I know we're going to dive into deeper on that, but when you really get bogged down or you're utilizing a system that isn't working for you and it's difficult, you have more margin for error, right?
Mhm.
And
Oh,
so that
yeah.
data that you're even using is slightly compromised or could be greatly compromised just
Yeah.
because of the difficulty of
And
of
you have
producing it.
I think you also have a lot of sort of this whole stress and anxiety about the process itself and the fact that you do it every year, and when it's time to start doing it again, there's a lot of discussion about how hard it's going to be and how much time it's going to take and how stressful it is. And then you just get through it and then you do it again next year and nothing ever gets better. And, there's a better ways, I think, that would kind of accommodate a lot more of you know, it's more like, yeah, I guess it's still going to be stressful, but less stress, less anxiety, more knowledge of the product and the system, so that there's not so much of that, like, I'm done with it, I'm putting it away, and now I've got to come back and completely relearn everything, you know. And heaven forbid there's been changes in the people involved, because then you really are starting over. So yeah, the case for a better solution, certainly than Excel, is I could talk all day about
Good,
that part
because
for sure.
I do think there may be a hidden gem here, and I know that Reba's been around, but it is a secret, I know, to even some clients I work with, that they're still stuck in the Excel world. And
Mm,
so, yeah, I'm anxious to learn more, and I'm sure our guests are as well. I think there's been, with centralization and then the also concept of decentralization, there's a lot of pushing and pulling on how to do it well. And I think what we've found out through time and really through a lot of conversation in multifamily is that, there's not a one size fits all, right? And so organizations are utilizing the structure of their verticals for how it suits their particular product. And so when we think about, the traditional property manager and how that role has changed over time, tell me a little bit about that old adage that, our property managers really, shouldn't be deeply involved in budgeting. How do you see that frame of thinking?
mhm. Well, I think that a business should do what they feel is correct for their business, and that hopefully they use a tool like the one that we have at REBA, that allows them to choose how much each of the different groups contribute, and whether or not the operating team has an 80% role or a 20% role. I believe personally that the community manager adds a lot of value to the budget process, and I think that it's beneficial not just from the perspective of the numbers and the hopefully, accurateness, of the numbers, but it gives them a growth opportunity. It gives them a chance to show what they know about their business. They're operating a multi-million-dollar asset. And I think that it is a growth opportunity. It's an opportunity for them to prove that they understand what's happening at their property and put that into a budget. Because, like I said, this is not numbers on a spreadsheet. This is the whole process of evaluating where your property's at, where your contracts, what's happening with utility costs, what's rent going to do, and what do you need to do with roofing and painting. It's like that person who's closest to the property has an enormous amount, I think, of value in contributing to the process of creating the numbers. And a lot of people, I think, are they would agree with this, but they then think, well, but because of my tool, it's really hard to involve that person. So the tool that allows for collaboration is best, because then you can let the people do the part that they need to contribute and let another person do the part that they contribute to, which is hard, and back to the whole Excel thing, which is hard in an Excel tool.
Yeah, and I can see the advantage of the collaboration with ensuring that the information coming out is more accurate, because you have the right inputs. You have everyone looking at the business plan holistically. And like you, I agree that the property manager is one of the closest people to the first impact with the customer. And so a lot of decisions are made at that level, and not having, the tool to be able to access not just at the budget creation time, but all throughout the year, as a way of gauging where you're at and what you're able to do. I totally agree with you. It's a necessity, and it really, I don't know that that's changed much at all, even though we've attempted to change that role.
Mhm.
The visibility of the business plan still needs to be at people's fingertips,
Yeah,
so that they can make good financial decisions regarding the property. So totally
absolutely.
with you on that one. Yeah. You talked a little bit about the tool itself. And I know one of the conversations that I have all the time is, okay, we've said this is the plan, but where are we going? And what does it look like now that we're 4 months into our business plan, and I want to know where we're going to end up. Like, what does that look like? The forecasting part of it. And I don't
Mhm.
think we've done a great job as an industry on doing that well. The reforecasting process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could not agree more. And I see it every day with our customers who I love them and I want to help them kind of cross that invisible line in the sand of forecasting is good. We should do it. Most of the time, what I see is we only forecast if it's like vitally necessary, because I think they think of it as another budget. And gosh, we just talked about it's a painful thing. Why would we do it again? I believe that if you have a tool that helps you forecast and you have the power of that forecast and it leads you straight into the budget. So you become a more seamless process that's not, as we talked about that whole, it's budget season and our hair's on fire. It's more just a continuous process because the tool itself is going to accommodate. When I used to try to forecast using Excel, we started from scratch every time, whether it was a forecast or a budget, and with a good, product that is meant for forecasting and budgeting in the multifamily space, you just step into it and pick up where you left off, and your actuals are updated automatically. Your rent data, which that's the hardest thing and also the most important thing to get right, it's updated automatically. So you have a great starting point, and you have the numbers you already use, the all of the drivers. And so I hope we do get to talk about drivers a little bit more because I feel that that is so important to this conversation. And I think it's important to know that you're going to use drivers in your forecast as well as your budget. And they mean what they mean in both of those environments because in your day-to-day business operation, there are business decisions that involve those same drivers. And they, you can look at what you used in your forecast or your budget, and you can then see where you're at in the moment, and you can make business decisions, and you can also, of course, explain how you are here, how did we get here? And why do we have a variance? Well, if you have a driver like the vacancy day factor or your retention rate that you used when you created your budgets for rent, especially, you have a lot more to work with, as a business. And I think that forecasting is key for that because budgets are stale from the minute they're done because, they take a couple months at least. And by the time they're done, it's a great benchmark to have, but they're stale already.
Totally. Totally. And you've hit on the word that I think we could spend some time on.
Yeah.
I hear it all the time from the clients that I work with outside of multifamily. I would say more so than inside multifamily. And those are those drivers.
Mhm.
In other industries, that's a term that's used
Mhm.
all the
Mhm.
time. What lever can we pull?
Mhm.
We're here. We need to get here. Where in the business can we really make an impact? And that transparency, that ability to be able to see that and see that quickly is really the competitive advantage.
Yeah.
If you're just looking at your business plan on the quarter or God forbid at the end, end of the
So you're
year, you've missed the boat, right? Or lots of opportunity where you could have used a driver to really impact the business. And so you mentioned a couple of those drivers, and I know there's a lot on the expense side as well. So
Yes.
if you were to name those drivers or just a few of the most important ones that you see your companies really leveraging, what would those be? Because I think that's a great a
Yeah.
great give to
Yeah.
our
Well,
audience.
REBA is a data company. We want people to, use data in a whole new way and a powerful, in the most powerful way possible. And we're also a connected analytics business. So the budget application is in the ecosystem of the BI application and the rent application. And the data is all there in, like I said, this kind of ocean of data. And so it can all be, moved back and forth. So when you do your budget in REBA budget, you can also have that budget ingested and not just the final answer. So the drivers, right? So in your day-to-day real life environment, you're looking at things like number of days vacant, retention rate. Also within the rent application, you're going to be talking about what is your, rent trend, is rent going up or down? Being able to identify the decisions you make with budgeting, renewal rent. You can get down to a kind of driver that is very similar to the decisions you make in your day-to-day, environment of setting renewal pricing. Like when you set renewal pricing, you might look at the gap between the existing rent and the street rent for that unit. You might have an expectation of what you might be getting in the future of growth of a percent wise. And so there's those levers, like you said, that you can move around and impact the value that you get for your rent and the values that you get for occupancy. So what you didn't hear me say is that occupancy is a driver, because it's our point of view that occupancy is an output. It's an output that comes from, you have expirations that are factual about each and every lease, and you provide a renewal retention rate, which then determines the renewal, which then determines the move out. The move out is then influenced by the vacancy days, because then that's when the move in will happen. And then there's a few more pieces that can get a little more complex, or just are, how you're going to handle month to month units. Are you going to have early termination? So those are also there, but not quite as big of a story to tell. And all of that is going to give you your outputs that look like occupancy percentage, vacancy loss on the financial statement, move-in count, move-out count, renewal count, all of these metrics that are really important to use. Because speaking of drivers, if you want to, and people usually do, want to calculate their make-ready costs based on the move-out count, because that's a driver, X times Y. 20 move-outs at a average cost per paint of $350. And you just do that across the board. You can make it even more granular if you want to break that into painting the kitchen on 25% of the turns versus not, So that kind of, there's a lot. I could talk all day. You have to stop me.
I don't want to. And I don't know that, our managers out there want to either, because I think this is a great tool. I can see this being really impactful for teams that don't necessarily understand their tremendous impact, whether positively or negatively, to, the performance of the asset. And right there, I mean, I remember whiteboarding those metrics, like getting up in front of the class and saying, okay, now we're going to calculate how much it costs to have this unit vacant one more day. And yet you can do this very quickly in a tool that is very transparent and accessible. It's the data that I think we sometimes don't have behind some of the things that we are using to manage people with, right? And motivate them.
Motivate. Yes.
Yeah.
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 Quick story. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Please.
Well, I'm thinking of a conversation I had with one of our customers about vacancy days. So a lot of times you have an occupancy goal. And since we budget using vacancy days as one of the major components of occupancy, when you talk about property operations, everyone's involved in the vacancy days. You've got turn time, you've got the pre-leasing time, you've got marketing type issues, or components, I guess. And then just, leasing the unit, getting a move-in date, getting the completely ready. Um, that is definitely a driver that you can like have a goal for the month because your budget said you were going to get to 28 days vacant, and you can really make that personal and accessible to everyone rather than just saying we're going to get to 95% occupancy because there's just a lot going on with that 95%. You had expirations, you had renewals, there's move-ins and moves out. So no, just keep it simple. Vacancy days, stick with that.
I love that. And, we just did a few episodes on KPIs and metrics because that's part of the struggle is which ones do you use? Which ones are the best to use and for what role? We have a famous saying over here that people should have a number and they should know what that number is so that they can gauge their performance and really know whether they're on or they're off. And for the business, it's the same thing. And if you're looking at just occupancy as an example, and you're not looking at all of the fine-tuned components that make up occupancy and really drilling down on those, you could totally miss the mark. So great stuff. And love that, again, the word transparency comes to mind because I can think that this is the opportunity for people to be able to see the data. Sometimes, again, we don't have that level of access. And I'm not talking about fully into the business back end, but even just this quick reference to impact of 1 day, 2 day, 3 day of vacancy on all the aspects of the business, every department is really compelling. And I like that versus the occupancy, which is
Oh
a
yeah,
little
yeah.
ambiguous.
Clear. It's clear. It's a clear.
Yes.
What is it they say about goals, right? Clear is definitely one of them. And knowing exactly, everybody understands what it means. There's, it means the days that the unit is vacant. There's no
Yeah.
other,
It's simple.
Yeah.
It's simple. Yeah, and data can become really complex and overwhelming. One of the things that you had said at the very beginning of our conversation, uh, you know, people dread doing the process because it becomes complicated. Uh, and so tell me a little bit about how you have seen it simplified um, through the process. You named a couple of things, but I'm really interested in understanding more about the new way versus the old way.
Well, I think one of the ways that you can make it more simple and save time, especially for the operating team, is and then more of a disciplined approach is to pull some of those things, like you mentioned earlier, centralized fashion, and to have a tool that lets you do that easily. So you can say, I'm going to say push down certain things. Especially, I used to have an Excel file that had all the list of the things that we called global. It was like the per unit cost of marketing, software, the PUPM, right? Also, those things that pop up, every year your service techs need to get reauthorized for AC, or I'm not going to use the right words, but those kinds of things.
Certification, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that you want to make sure everybody is including in your budget. So in their budget. So, a system like the one that we have at REBA is going to allow you to create those sort of global standard costs that then can be assigned out into the correct account, the consistent account that you want to use, because invariably in my past, people didn't always use the account I told them to use. And then also, if in the middle of the process you get your new amount that you didn't have 2 months ago, you can just put that in, and it just goes. It's a 2-minute thing at the most to get it populated, depending on how many properties you have. But it's a quick update. So things like that, or being able to make certain decisions about certain accounts that you're just like, why make a manager try to figure out what to do with something that's a very lightly used account? And I'm just going to say, because accounting, there's numbers in it and something should be there, but nobody, the manager certainly should know what to put there. You can either import those numbers in so they're there, nobody has to think about them. You could use some methods to create a number for next year, like grow the current year by 3% to create next year. And you can do that more in a top side fashion. You can also do it in the, you know, intersection of the property and the account by the manager as well. So you get to be flexible. Each business is going to have exactly the way they want to do it. And they're also going to get to evolve into possibly a little bit different way. So we have customers who are on their third, fourth year of using REBA budget, and they don't use it the same way in year 3 as they did in year 1, because they start to see like, oh, I get it. I can really save a lot of people a lot of time, and they have, and they continue to do that. So it's fun to kind of see that evolve, that evolution.
Yeah, well, for sure, because right there, there's the value, I think. I know certainly when we have tools, we want them to grow as well, like to adapt and to, evolve. So my question, I have this question and I've been asking it, I think probably with everyone I've been talking to, and it really has to do with AI and how all of that is impacting what you're working with. What are you doing there in
Oh
that
yeah.
arena?
Well, REBA itself is doing quite a bit. That is, focused and full time. The REBA budget application, well, first of all, we are all right in the heart of budget season, but we have we have a lot of really good plans for the future. And I think that for the REBA budget side, the first step is helping. I have a real big theme of I want these folks, these human beings who are working with their budget, presenting their budget, defending their budget, explaining it. I want them to feel really smart. I want them to be smart. I want them to have a junior analyst
Yes.
named REBA
Yes.
AI who is going to help them look for the things. So what the worst thing in the world is to go to your review meeting and you think you're prepared, and within the first 15 seconds, you are called out for something that you were like, oh, I should have seen that. I didn't notice that. It happens every time. We want REBA AI to find anything that it thinks you're going to get asked so that you're already ready. It might be valid. It doesn't mean your budget's wrong, but it's good to be able to explain it. So calling those kinds of things in a way that you don't have to spend hours pouring through your long, financial statement looking for things. You get tired, your eyeballs just don't work anymore, and you don't even know what you're looking at. So let AI, like take that part. And then yes, the human part has to be there to evaluate and to explain, but at least it's, more front and center, made easy.
Yeah. Well, and Krista, you're really bringing the heart to it. And as you were speaking, I was reliving those moments of, oh man, should have caught that.
Yeah,
Darn
see,
it.
you and I are bonding already. Bonding over budgets is like a
Totally.
budget bonding. It's a real
Whoa,
thing.
there
It's
should
a
be a
real
group.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a support group for budget people, but it sounds like
Yeah.
you're solving for all of that right now. And
That's the goal.
I wish I would have known. I wish I would have known back when.
Me too.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
trying.
Yeah. Well, and I love that because, I think oftentimes products that we utilize outside of multifamily, even in our own lives, they're not always thinking about that side of the interaction and how the technology is going to interact from a human side. And especially right now, right? That's all the conversation, and you've really brought a human side to this, and bringing out the pain, but in a hopeful way. Like there is a solution. There
Yeah.
are solvables here, and that's exciting. especially at the tail end of budgets. So people that are listening are like, huh.
This is the perfect time to start thinking about next year. Yeah, I know a lot. You might think this is the perfect time to put a bow on it and go on vacation, and that's fine too. But I also think that the perfect time to think about it happens so quickly, and you do need to get a little bit of a runway going, and it does take a bit of, changing a budget plan, doing something differently with an entire organization is huge. And I would say just it's not really the product itself, but I think working, with the team that I work with, the implementation, the configuration, the change management, it all goes hand in hand. We're not just selling, like an Apple iPhone and then you go back and figure it out. It's, we're together, we're your consultant, we're your counselor, we've seen a lot and we have a ton of experience, and we want, we work with the customer because we know that they know what they want until they start to see a better plan. And we continue to just work with them, and we want everyone to have the best experience. So I think that's a big part of the whole, part of the whole game is to have that customer centered attitude with real people who really understand what it's like to manage a property, what it's like to look at financial statements in multifamily, what rent is like, loss to lease, all of these things. We fully understand all of those things. Um, and I think that's really helpful.
Totally. And just bringing up the whole word or phrase change management, it's been around for a really long time, and I am now hearing it differently. And I'm hearing it in different conversations of it really being at the forefront. It used to be this sort of squishy thing to the side that people would think about as an afterthought to an implementation.
Mhm.
And now it's very strategic. Uh, Now that's the clinical way, but the human way, what a refreshing approach in our industry. Because even though people sometimes say that they are, really concerned, or they have that in mind as, and they're going to be your partner throughout the whole journey, it's really good to hear that, that is how you represent. And you're right, it's so important. That implementation process is never smooth,
Oh,
but you can reduce the friction by having that partner, because there's a little bit of ignorance on both sides. Like the provider doesn't know all the systems, processes, people,
mhm.
within the organization. And then on the flip side, you know, your operator doesn't know the software. And
Yeah.
so that's where all of
Uh,
that relationship needs to be built, and the
mhm.
trust is built. And sometimes it's just we don't go far enough in that relationship, right? And that's where I see the failure. Is not necessarily the product, not necessarily the company, but this whole thing where we come together and it's just not
Yeah.
sufficient
What
for what's
happened?
called
Right.
for.
Yeah, I call it out a lot. I call out, like you're asking me questions right now that I can tell are coming from a place of wanting to hold on to the way you've always done it. And so I'm just going to say that things that are different are different. And I'm not going to say they're harder, but I'm going to say that if you can acknowledge that this is a change and it's different, that is so helpful to just your own. Everybody wants to feel confident about what they're doing. They want to know they're on the right track. And if they start to get to feel shaky about that, that's when the wheels can fall off. And that's when you sort of reset and go, this is new, this is different. You have to, come from that place. And, we're here. We're not leaving you alone.
Krista, that was probably one of the greatest gives right there.
Yeah.
That was a gift, and I think people will use that.
Yeah.
It's very simple. It's really dealing with the real issue that's getting in the way, and again, the caring, and that's where that comes from, and that's so important. It's so important. We're all, yeah. Go ahead. Did you have something to add
Oh
there?
no, I'm just gonna say people, and
Yes.
they're the way they are. We're all humans, and this is where we're at. We're not machines, and we have to work with personalities and the way that the human, condition is with change. Yeah.
Yeah, that mindset for sure. Well, we're almost at time together. In fact, I could, again, like you, talk for another 3 hours easily on all of this fun stuff.
Yeah.
But if you had one message that you would want to share for multifamily operators about budgeting, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. I think use the right tool. Investigate the right tool. Think about what you would like to do in the future versus what you would like to do the same exact way, but with a different tool. Like accept the fact that it's going to be a change. So go with it with that in mind. And also, I really, I think the idea of it's getting a forecast using a product that is more of a year-round thing instead of picking it up and dusting it off, because I think there's so much value to that in so many ways. Yeah. Did you say I only had two that I could make? But
No. Do you have
I know.
more?
Well,
Please
yeah,
share.
I think the collaboration is also key, and it's part of your tool is being able to collaborate so that you're breaking this stuff up and you're letting the right people do the right things instead of forcing everything into the hands of one or two people to have to figure out. Yeah.
I
And
love it.
accept the change management. I think that's extremely key.
That's great. That's great. And that was, I think, 5, which is just
I know, I'm
more
sorry.
bonus material. I just
being
love it.
concise. I've been told.
Well, it's good. It's good. And I think everyone can identify with at least one or two, or maybe all of what you brought up. And I think, it's certainly a nice add to the whole budget process, a very positive way of possibly looking at it for next year, for
Talk
sure.
about the bow, wrapping it up with the bow, right?
Wrapping it up with the bow. Yes, I love it. Well, Krista, thank you again for taking time out with me today and sharing all of your vast knowledge about the power of budgets and forecasting and how things are changing in our world with AI and, just some of those advancements and giving some really, I think, telling and awesome and truthful suggestions and gifts to our multifamily friends so that they can look at this next year in a different way. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I have been thrilled to be here, Suzanne. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed our, talk about budgeting and look forward to doing it again.
We really need to, for sure.
Yes.
All right.
There's always something new to learn.
Always. Thanks again, Krista.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in to Multifamily Elevated, where we hope that you are inspired and ready to go, elevated to take on your next challenge in multifamily. So if you liked this episode, please subscribe, like, comment, and of course share with your network. And don't forget that this was brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network that is also sharing the latest and greatest in trends, ideas, and content across our multifamily space. Until next time, keep elevating, and we'll talk soon.